Hey, good night, everybody. Welcome to our Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz to a realistic map of meaning. Tonight, he's going to share about the secret of the ram's horn and maybe how it affects the whole world. So I think we got an interesting topic. So let's just jump right in and say hello. Shalom, Rabbi Schwartz. We're going to turn the class over to you and look forward to hearing what you have to share.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. I'm going to share the screen here, so I have some slides that will help me do this presentation. Do we have a slide with some writing on it there on the front? Does everybody see that? Okay. All right, so let's go to this slide better. We'll start here with a quick review. And last week, the last time we met, I pointed out that we live in a world of threes, three dimensions, three types of material, solid, liquid, and gas, three ways of telling time, month, day, year. That's like a physical experience. The week is not a physical experience. It's just something that the Torah actually introduced, but there's no physical experience to it. Three dimensions. We have to consume three types of things. We have to breathe. We have to drink. We have to eat, and so on. So it's really all around us. It's existential. We may not notice it, but the threes are everywhere we turn. And then the final thing, the real kicker was that just lately, so to speak, in human history, we found out that we're on the third planet from the sun. So another three, although it's not, we don't experience that, but it just fits into the pattern. So, and I started noticing this and realizing this when I started studying the shofar, because as I explained last week, the shofar sounds are all composed of three. The there's three verses that tell us to blow it three times, and then there's the understanding that those are broken sounds. So we have to blow a broken sound three times, and every time we blow a broken sound, we have to have a straight sound before and after. So the broken sound is bracketed by a full sound. So that's a duh, that's the full sound, and then the broken sound could be which is two types of broken sounds, and then followed by the again at the end. And we do this quite a few times, but really we had to do it three times because it said it three times. There's three verses. We had to do, each one had to become three because we are taught by the oral law, the oral Torah, that the instruction was that the broken sound has to be preceded and succeeded by a long sign. And then also the sound itself, the broken sound itself, what was that? And I surmised from the word trua, which was pronounced trua with trill. You have to have three little things in there to make the trill. So that could have been the t-t-t, or the length of that t-t-t, the shortest possible sound, three of them, would be the the medium sign, the sound, three of those. But it's always three. So right there, three times three to three is 27. It seems like God was just enthralled by to hear three so many times that He asked us to blow it on Rosh Hashanah, the Day of Judgment. And there's all kinds of reasons given why, but we lose sight of that three times three times three because what happened was the Jewish people. There may have been a custom in different tribes to blow a different broken sound. Maybe one guy broke just the little sounds, and one guy blew the middle sounds, and one guy blew both together, or other variations. But we have these handed down to us. So just to be sure, we blow each kind because we're not sure which tribe we come from, what our ancestral heritage was. So just to be sure, we blow all three kinds. So then there's another variation. And then there's room in the service to blow again three times. There's actually the only time in the year when there's an additional service on the Sabbath and Shabbos, and on holidays. There's always an additional service in the morning. But the only time that additional service has three blessings in the middle, as opposed to one, is on Rosh Hashanah. So there was three blessings there, and they talk about the three kinds. So just kept going 3 by 3 by 3, but eventually we got to 90, and then for the sake of mimicking a verse in the prophets that talks about the woman crying 100 times, so we added another 10 to get 100. And everybody talks about the 100 times, and they lose sight of those 3 times 3 times 3. Really, 27 was the basic. So I was, and when I discovered that, when I realized it was 3 times 3 times 3, I was pondering what the heck would that be? What would be the reason for that? And the only clue I had to go on was something in the Rambam, the Maimonides, who had said, even though we sound the shofar just to follow the Torah instruction, as we do what we're told, right? Some things we're not necessarily going to understand. Treat it as if saying, "You that sleep, bestir yourselves, and you who slumber awake. Examine your conduct, turn in repentance, and remember your Creator. You who pursue temporary pleasures, care instead for your souls which last forever." And that's the words of Maimonides. So I said, so the threes. So it seems that he's saying that it would wake us up, the sound of the shofar. And so, what is it in the threes that would particularly wake us up? I got this sort of here to sort of demonstrate that somehow the soul is awakening to the sound of the three, but I had no idea why. So I figured, really didn't have anybody directing me what to do, but I figured maybe if I go back to creation, the creation story, I might find something there that would tell me why, what about creation sort of focused on threes. I was just guessing. And so what I have here in front of you is the entire English translation of 1:1 to 2:3. Well, it doesn't go that to the third verse in the second chapter, and that is the story of the first 7 days. And I know you can't read it because it's so small. I had to compress it to put it on a slide, but I'm sure you can see the red dots or squares that appear on the slide. And those red dots indicate every time the word created appears, because the word created is what the story is all about. That God's creating the world, the universe. And you would expect to find the story just peppered with the word create, but it's not. It's got a total of 6 instances of using the word create. And the first one, of course, is in the Big Bang. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So, there was nothing there, and then he created nothing. Now, the word create, I have to emphasize, is in Latin called creatio ex nihilo, creating from nothing. So this is a particular Hebrew word that means creating from nothing. It's not forming or fashioning or making, but it's creating from nothing. And it only appears 6 times. Everything, there was nothing. But okay, you start off in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That sounded like you had everything after the first act of creation. So when you create the heavens and the earth, you're creating the raw materials. After that, from that first time, the word is not repeated. Instead, other words used. God separated, God made sprout, God made produce, governed, gathered, placed, all kinds of other verbs, but not the verb to create. And that's describing what's happening in the intervening days from day 1, making the light and the firmament and the separation and so on, all those things. And it's not used again until we get to, let me go first to the end. At the last 6th one is the description of the Sabbath day, and that ends with 3 words: bara Elohim lasoch, which means God created to do. And you have that word bara again, which is the same thing as what we started with in the beginning, which says Bereshis bara lakim. The 2 words bara lakim here, meaning God created. So in the beginning, God created, and here at the end is God created to do. So the second and third words starting off are God created, and the second last and third last words are the same 2 words of the story. So they kind of bracket the whole story. And you might say that it's just a summary of everything that happened before, or you might say that the Sabbath day was the creation of nothing, because that was the first time nothing got done, nothing got created, God rested. So there's nothing to do. That was on the to-do list to have a nothing. And so God was able to cross that off his list. Either way, that is the first and last time that the word is mentioned. So, but the second time that it's mentioned is when God created the great creatures of the sea. That's the way it's translated in the international version, which I copied this from. But the word for the great creatures of the sea is interesting, because another way of translating it is God created the large reptiles, because the word used for the great creatures is tanin, and tanin that's a Hebrew word, and that is exactly the same word that's used to describe, if you'll remember, the story when Moses first came to Pharaoh to ask him to let the people go, and he had this magical trick of turning his staff into a snake. So it says he threw down his staff, and it turned into a tanin. So it's translated as a snake. It could have been a reptile. And here it's saying God created the taninim gedolim, the large reptiles. That's another way of translating it, instead of the great creatures of the sea. And so we have a mention, in my opinion, we may have a mention there of the dinosaurs that were created first. But whatever it was, that's the next time that the word created is used. And it kind of makes sense to me, because what you have is, on day one, you have created. Day two, you have separated. Day three, gathered. Day four, governed. Day five, created again. So what does that tell me? It tells me that on day one, you created all the raw materials. And it's like a plant. So you take the raw materials, you put them together this way, that way, you heat them up, you cool them down, you stretch them, you compress them, whatever it is you're doing, and you can make all kinds of different things out of them. What you can't make out of them is animal life. Animal life moves on its own, and it has a will of its own. That requires something special, something new that wasn't there before, to allow the creatures to move on their own, to make animal life. So that's why on day five, it finally came back to the word bara, of creating, because that came out of nowhere. That you can't create animal life out of plants or out of chemicals. They've been trying, but they haven't been able to. As a matter of fact, there's a whole study now on the origin of life, how did it ever transferred, and they have no proof, no idea how did it ever happen. So let's go back to this text here, and that was the second time. So we've got the first time, we've got the second time, we've got the last time. That's three. There's another three. God created, and this is when God made man. God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Well, that's using the word created three times in the same verse. So that's what I was looking for. When I found this, I just, I felt like I won the jackpot, because I was looking for something three, and here I found exactly what I was looking for, because it was three talking about creating man. So God created the universe, then he created animals, then he had to create man. That's 27 shofar sounds. The sounds are I don't know, reverberating or tooting the creation of man, who's built on this three creations. To me, it means that there was before there was nothing in the universe, so God had to create raw materials. Then he was able to push and pull and so on into various things, plants, all the way to plants, but not animal life. For animal life, he had to insert a new novel thing out of nothing. So that's the second create. And then to get man, there was three new ingredients, three new stages of development that were necessary, that just weren't there before. There was nothing to build upon to make them come out, and that's us. So we're naturally going to resonate with the three, because that's what we're really all about. So this was for me, a very exciting find. I've got here now on the text, even the smaller text. Here I've copied the entire, I don't forget how far it goes, but all the way to chapter 6, where this is the text of Genesis, the first weekly reading that we do when we start reading the Torah. This is the whole weekly reading. Very small text because I wanted to show you a pattern. And here's the three or the six rather red dots that we had before. I've outlined them in red. The first, that's the till chapter 2, verse 3. Then there's this green thing here in the middle. That's another instance of create. And there's 3 here down below. There's another instance of create. And that in the entire first reading, the entire opening of Genesis, that is all the times that it says create, just those places. I combed through the text very carefully, and that's all I could find. What are they? So the middle one is, no, I'm sorry, this is the last one. And the last one is, this is the written account of Adam's family line. When God created mankind, he made them in the likeness of God. He created them male and female and blessed them, and he named them mankind when they were created. Again, you have the word create 3 times. So that was the 3 green things down here. So it's really going back. This is the written account of Adam's family line. When God created mankind, it's going back to the beginning of the story. It's telling it over again from a different perspective. I'll show you in a minute. But again, to introduce the story, it again uses the word create 3 times. There's a third story, and that's the one in the middle. And it too is going back to the beginning. It's right after the 7th day. It's the beginning of the story of the Garden of Eden. And it starts off by saying, this is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created, when the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. So there's the word created. It's kind of replicated the phrase from in the beginning God created, because it says the heavens and the earth. And repeats it, the heavens and the earth, and here's the earth and the heavens. But it only says create 1 time. So, but what we have here is we have the 3s replicated. They're coming apart and coming together. The first story was when God created everything and down to man. So we saw the 3s there. The second story that we just showed you was talking about introducing the story of Adam and Eve and the snake. And the third story is the genealogy. When that story begins, when it says 3 times created, it's going to tell you how long Adam lived, and then he had children, and he lived to so long, and he died, and then his son took over, Seth, and he lived so long, and he had children, and then he died, and so on for 10 generations. So it's going through the 10 generations, but it started that whole story by going back to the very beginning and saying create again. So these 3 building blocks have been repeated very, very emphatically, and I was very excited to find this because this was a discovery of mine. Now, the only problem that I had, because I wanted it to be right and I had to be honest, and so any aberration in the scheme might prove it wrong. And so my problem was that in the middle account, the story of Garden of Eden, it started with only 1 create. It went back to the beginning, but it only said created once. So that presented a problem to me, and I was staring at the page. I was hoping that somehow there would be a way to overcome this, and I found it, by George, because the word for they were created, it's 1 word in Hebrew, this phrase, when they were created. So again, the verse is, this is the account of the heavens and earth, when they were created, when the Lord God made the earth and heavens. 1 word is, in Hebrew, it says this phrase, when they were created. Here is the Hebrew word. And if I would use English characters to put down the sounds of these Hebrew letters, it would be BHBRM. And the way to pronounce it is Behibaram. Behibaram. But that's bara is the root, the Hebrew word of the word create. But in Hebrew, you add suffixes and prefixes to add to the word, and that's why you have so many letters there. But here's the interesting thing. When I was staring at the word, all of a sudden I noticed, I mean, it's there, it's staring in your face, but you see it so often you don't think about it. This one word Bihibaram is always spelled with this letter here, small. In English, it would be this, Bihibaram, a small h. It's always written like that in the scroll, not necessarily in a printed text, but in a handwritten scroll. That's one of the traditions that H sound in Hey in Hebrew has to be written small. Why would that be the case? Well, the Hey, in biblical Hebrew, they don't have numbers. They don't have any symbols for numbers. They use the letters to represent numbers. They start with the first letter A, Aleph, and then Beit, B, and then G instead of C in Hebrew, and D, follows the D in English. So A, B, C, D. Each one of these letters has a numeric value. The fifth one has the numeric value of 5. Well, so that's that letter that was small, was 5. So what had occurred to me was that what was happening is that it's highlighting by making the letter Hey small, it's trying to highlight the numerical value. The alternative, instead of using it as a letter, treat it as a number. B'five baram. In other words, once that just in that method, he's saying that there was 5 stages to the creation. First, God created the universe, then He created the animals, and then He create man. So there's that in accomplishing all this, it was really 5 acts of creation to get to where we can continue this story. So again, I had the 3 proofed about that. So I was very excited about that because not only that, what I finally realized, the kicker from after all these 3s and so on, was that the very first time that we find 3, the created the verse 3 in the first time, is in verse 27, which is, of course, is 3 times 3 times 3. So that you can't get more serendipitous than that. And this is the actual 27th verse of the Torah. I don't have a picture of a Torah scroll to give you, but in the Torah scroll, there are no chapters and verses. They're not numbered. This was an invention by an archbishop in the 1300s in England. To make it easier to find things in the Torah, he introduced the idea of dividing them down by chapters and numbering the verses after that. So he used the original verse layout. We had this tradition, this is a verse, this is a verse, this is, even though there's no periods or commas or dots in the scroll, but there was a strong tradition, this was the verse. So he used that, and he just divided them to chapters. So this became the way of finding things easier. But after the first chapter, you don't know what number it is because he just imposed his own chapters on it. But this one is the first chapter, so it's the 27th verse. 3 times 3 times 3. That's where God decided to write in the words of create, create, create. So it's very. I use the image of Pinocchio here to show how the strings are being pulled with the I think the sounds of the shofar sort of pull our inner strings and resonate with our soul because we've come from this background. Now, what the next question is, so that explains why this would resonate with our souls, why it would wake us up. I'm left with 2 questions, really, after this discovery. 2 questions are that, first, curious, what exactly is it that those magic ingredients that went into us, or those components, those 3-part components that the shofar is resonating with? That would be interesting to know. And there's another question that may be a little more practical, and that is why, if that's who we are, if that's how we're made up, and the shofar can wake us up with sounding the 3s like that. So then it occurs to me to ask, why would God wait a whole year before waking us up? Why not give us a tool that would resonate with that 3-part makeup that we have, so that we could be woken up more regularly? And those 2 questions are really what I was alluding to when I wrote in the announcement for tonight's class, is this may be the secret for the whole universe, because um, there's a there's an opening here of the threes. It's very, very common to find threes. By the way, I have to tell you, as a matter of fact, that in the process of this search, I actually found, you can find it yourself. I went onto Google and I tried different things of threes. And it turns out there's a site called the Book of Threes, and there's a guy by the name of Michael Eck, I think his name is. And I don't know if he's still tied, if you can find the trace to him in this thing, because it's gone through various iterations. I'm working on this. This was like maybe 10 years ago. Um, but he independently, he's not Jewish, um, and he lives in Philadelphia, which is where my son lives. I phoned him up once, um, but we could have just discussed this fascination with trees. He just became fascinated because, not from the Torah, but from he just noticed that everything is built on threes. Philosophy are full of threes. Arithmetic is full of threes. Literature is full of threes. All of Shakespeare's plays are three parts, three acts. Um, Logic has three rules in it, and not Newton's three laws. And on and on and on and on. I forget already how prolific it was, but he's got thousands of instances of threes. When he started noticing this, he became so fascinated, he started accumulating them and documenting them on this website, the Book of Threes, and now they're divided by areas: literature and economics and art and music and so on. And in every field of human endeavor you care to, there's just a proliferation of threes, because it's really natural to us to think in terms of three. And in fact, I would suggest that it's this proclivity to the threes, this natural affinity to resonate with threes in our lives, that induced or um, drove the early Christian theologists to talk about Trinity, because it is there is something there about that we relate in three ways. But I think they corrupted the idea, and my rabbi explained, as an aside to that, when we were studying the origins of the philosophy of Judaism, we have a special mitzvah, special instruction in the Torah to know God. That's one. But then there's another special instruction to know that God is one. Now, why do you need a special instruction to know that God is one? God is one. And so you already have an instruction to know God. And if you have an instruction to know God, you'll know that he's one. That's part of knowing God. So why do you need an instruction specially to know that God is one? And my Rebbe explained, he said that the power, the temptation to think in terms of three is so strong that we needed the power that an extra instruction from God gives you. When God gives you an instruction, you have the power to follow the instruction. That he's building it into the system. As if I'm instructing you, then I'm telling you, you have the power to follow this instruction. So we needed the power of that instruction to keep clear and straight on the fact that there's only one God and not more. So and we can relate to them in three ways, in many ways, but always focus in on the oneness, the unity. Um, so that's a very important thing. Now, the answer to the other two questions, the last two questions I've asked, and that is, what are those three things? I can't say for sure, but I have an idea. And why do we have to wait a year? On that, I have a very good answer, and that would be this the subject of another lesson that will intrigue you, I think, just as much as this, I hope. And so I'll leave it at that and see if there's any questions.
Well,
Ben?
Rabbi, I really enjoyed the point you brought out about the small che, that numerical 5, and the notion of backdating that moment. I mean, I'm one that sees it as a continuous flowing story, because verse 5 right after that in chapter 2 of Genesis, it says, now no tree of the field was yet in the earth. And when it uses the phrase of the field, I always read that was direct agriculture, talking about a rather than just wild grass. It's talking about tree of the field specifically. It's talking about, okay, at this point going forward, we're talking about after or just before the dawn of agriculture. Same when it reads beast of the field, they're talking about domestication. And I always butted heads with theologians, and they were always trying to backdate chapter 2 as being a reiteration of what went on in Genesis 1:26. And where did that notion come from? And this is the first time I've ever heard it explained with that little hey and the number 5 that actually made any logical sense. And yet I still see that there's flow there by the phrase of the field. But I've been blown away with a lot lately. I'm reading that Sefer HaKarim, the way the rabbi brought out 3 branches, also showing there that the word for Hashem there, he's using the Lord God. You phrased it's introducing the Tetragrammaton before Sinai, but he cited 3 branches of fundamental principles, whereas the first one ends right at that transition of the name. First one being that God exists, second that the divine revelation, God speaks to man, and then thirdly, where it starts to in the later Genesis only uses the word Lord. He teaches it as the root of divine reward and punishment. 3 fundamental principles that branch then into all other fundamental principles. And I just was, I've heard
like
so
that.
much that it gets overloading sometimes.
And I haven't even seen him. I wasn't building on what he said, but there you go. You was in conformity with the discovery of 3s. So so there you go. Next time we meet will be this coming Wednesday, and I'll try to move this forward, this idea, and start mining. They use the data mining. I'm going to do some data mining, looking for the further meaning or roots of the 3s and where we use it, how we use it, and how it's implemented. Stay tuned.
Does anybody in the Zoom meeting have any final comments or questions for the rabbi? Grace, Robbie, Ronald, anybody?
There was one.
Go on, Robbie.
Sorry, Ronald. There was one verse I think you said that had 3 creations in it, and it was, I think it had animal and man, and I didn't catch the last.
Oh, it was he's talking about Genesis 1:26.
Yeah.
27.
Okay.
27. 3 times 3 times 3.
What was the 3rd creation though?
What it just said created. He used the word create 3 times to describe God creating man and woman.
Oh, okay.
So there's hints in the verse what it might be alluding to, but that's we'll have to examine that next time. But there's the idea was that there was a 3-part creation.
And you're going to connect all this back to the 3 in the shofar blowy, right?
The shofar resonates. Those sounds resonate with those ideas.
So it rings true.
Right.
Excellent.
Arnold, you had something you wanted to say?
Oh, I just wanted to say I'm going to have to rewatch it and try and soak it up a bit heavier. I've had a hectic weekend with a lot of Zoom, and
I have a YouTube video.
It's sort of a bit high for me, so when it comes up I'll revisit it and try and focus on it a bit better than I'm capable of at the moment. It's very interesting, as always.
There's 2 YouTube videos on the last one and this one that I prepared some time ago. You can watch this over, or you can watch those YouTube videos. They're about 10 minutes each. And And so I'm going to now I'll forward the links to those 2 YouTube videos as soon as we sign off. I'll send an email out to all the Zoom participants, and if Dan can post them on the Facebook or YouTube things, so that people can link to that too. So it'll be a good review.
Well, thank you so much, Rabbi. And so we will see you on Wednesday night. So that's Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific for more Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz. And for those of you wondering still why I'm calling it Zoom Daily, is because I've had my schedule change. But next couple of weeks, my schedule is freed up on the Monday, Tuesday. So we may eventually, Hashem willing, be able to open it up more back to 5 days a week. If it works with Rabbi Shlomo's schedule. But so we will be back Wednesday with our Zoom Daily. So till then, we're going to sign out. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, everybody. Bye for now.